because these are the ancient foods of wisdom, the wonderful foods that have been around for thousands of years that literally was medicine. If you had a healthy immune system, you survived. If you didn't, you died. So before the modern man had antibiotics, we had probiotics, and we had prevention through nutrition. And those civilizations that did well drank raw milk and raw milk kefirs and had whole food nutritions. We are realizing now that modern medicine has not really appreciated the biome.
Welcome to the Wise Traditions Podcast, sponsored by the Weston A. Price Foundation for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. We're your source for scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom to help you achieve optimal health.
I'm your host, Hilda Labrada Gore. This is episode 151, and my guest is Mark McAfee, the head of Organic Pastures Dairy and the founder and chairman of the Raw Milk Institute. Mark is a raw milk expert, and he's passionate about the topic. I had the privilege of talking with Mark in late July as part of a big celebration with the Pasadena chapter of the Weston A. Price Foundation in California. It was an amazing potluck that culminated in an ice cream social made with what else but raw milk. We also were treated to live music by Michelle Bloom, whose music we have included throughout today's show. You are in for a treat as well. The conversation with Mark covered a lot of ground, from the beneficial bacteria and proteins that are in raw milk to the differences between pasteurized, organic, and raw milks, and even nut milks, to the role raw milk plays in the health of our gut microbiome. Before we get into the conversation, we want to give a quick thanks to our sponsors, Ancestral Supplements, putting back in what the modern world has left out. New Zealand-sourced liver, organ meats, and bone marrow in convenient gelatin capsules. Order yours today at ancestralsupplements.com. And the Weston A. Price Foundation. We want to invite you to come to our Wise Traditions Conference in November in Baltimore. It's a wonderful gathering of like-minded people with amazing food and quality speakers. Early bird pricing is in effect through September 20th, so act now. Go to wisetraditions.org to register today and use the coupon code PODCAST for an additional $25 off the regular price. I hope to see you there.
Welcome to Wise Traditions. Oh my gosh, we are so glad to be here in beautiful Sierra Madre, California, in this Nature Friends Center. We've enjoyed a wonderfully nourishing meal, and now we're going to talk with Mark McAfee, the head of Organic Pastures Dairy. Let's welcome Mark, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, so there are so many things to talk about tonight. I want to get the big picture about milk. There's raw milk, there's organic milk, there's almond milk, there's conventional, there's all kinds of stuff. And Mark is an expert on all of these things. But I just want to take it from the top and have Mark tell us a little bit about what raw milk really is.
Raw milk comes directly from the cow to you. That's it. It's not processed in any way. Now, discussion becomes much, much grander when you talk about processed milks and almond milks and soy milks and hemp milks and hemp milk. Don't you smoke that? But there's just so many things masquerading as milk right now. And even the newest news just came out from the FDA just a couple weeks ago where the commissioner said, by the way, we're going to change the rules so that the plant-based milks can't be called milk anymore. And the dairymen are really going crazy going, yes, that's fantastic. So there's lots of things going on in the world of milk, conventional, organic, and raw right now across the country and internationally.
Well, I also know there's a movement and a lot of discussion about the gut microbiome, right? And how we're made up of more bacteria and cells than we ever imagined, and how that our health is tied to what's going on in our gut. What does raw milk have to do with that?
Well, let's start at 101 here. A baby is born. Their first food of life is breast milk. It's raw milk. There's a lot of instruction in what I just said, because if you really study that, and the people at UC Davis study at the International Milk Genomics Consortium, they tear this apart. They tear milk apart, breast milk apart, to figure out what's in it. It's got 700 different kinds of beneficial bacteria, a biodiversity of bacteria, 700 different kinds of bacteria. Any guesses how many bacteria types there are in yogurt? Maybe 4 or 5? We're talking about 700 different kinds of bacteria found in breast milk for a reason. The baby's born without bacteria in their gut. They need an immune system, so Mother Nature provides for this. And fantastic first food of life, raw milk, breast milk, has 700 different kinds of bacteria. What about proteins? How many proteins are there in breast milk? 2,500 different kinds of proteins. Oh my God. There's lists that just goes on and on that we can't figure out what's in breast milk. It's there because of the pressures of 100,000 years of evolution to make an optimist a perfect food for life. Well, what happens after breast milk is finished? The mom stops breastfeeding. The babies go into this whirlwind now in first world countries of baby formulas, highly processed milks, no milks, God knows what, right? Well, let's simplify that. Traditionally, it's always been mother's breast milk and mom drinking raw milk and the baby going to more raw milk from a cow, a goat, a sheep, a horse, a camel. It's been the wonderful domesticated animal that's been on grass and sunshine that's been close by the family that continues to nourish the baby. So raw milk is that wonderful food. It's so simple and extremely complex. So it's not an easy thing to talk about, and we could get more into that, but it's a powerful subject. By the way, processors hate raw milk because they don't get to process it. So it's politically incorrect, but consumers love it. Consumers and farmers love it. The processors don't like it. So it's kind of an interesting alternative pathway for food systems to take.
Now, why is it important for this raw milk to come from pastured animals?
Well, a pasture creates the right kind of food safety environment. So the cows aren't laying down in a bunch of manure. They're laying down in sunshine, and they've got sunshine creates vitamin D. And they also get the grass, and the grass sequesters carbon. It's good for the environment. It's also good for CLA, conjugated linoleic acid, and omega-3 fatty acid ratios. Those are the good fats that are antioxidant and very, very good for you. They've been traditionally in our foods for thousands of years. And those are the things that are antioxidants. They fight cancer. They're good for your immune system. So good fats, the good environment, the right kind of bacteria, that's what comes from grass-fed animals. It's very, very important.
So why are people so scared of raw milk?
Well, they should be. If you look at the history of raw milk going back 120 years, in New York, Boston, Philadelphia, even in Great Britain and in Moscow, there were people that died. 40% of the people that died in New York, 40% that drank milk from the distilleries dairies in the 1880s, 1890s. And instead of cleaning up their act and making raw milk clean like it was in the countryside 40 years earlier, they decided to cook it. And what do you know? Overnight, 40% fewer people died. 10% people died instead of 50%. So it was an excuse for filth. It was not really anything other than that. And then from that, you got the ease of commercialization and industrialization of milk that came out of that. Why would you make expensive milk that takes a lot of regard and you have to worry about washing your hands and keeping clean water and worrying about typhoid and tuberculosis? Why would you worry about all that stuff when you could just cook it? And that was the beginning of the end of raw milk until literally 20 years ago when it got resurrected, and you had Altadena doing raw milk in LA and then Organic Pastures, and raw milk really became super important. And you know what? Sally played a big role in that with Wise Traditions, because these are the ancient foods of wisdom, the wonderful foods that have been around for thousands of years that literally was medicine. If you had a healthy immune system, you survived. If you didn't, you died. So before the modern man had antibiotics, we had probiotics. And we had prevention through nutrition. And those civilizations that did well drank raw milk and raw milk kefirs and had whole food nutritions. And so we are realizing now that modern medicine has not really appreciated the biome. Anybody have any idea when the biome was actually discovered? 2003. $4 billion of our money was spent by, guess who? It wasn't a medical organization. It was the Department of Energy. Our Department of Energy, because they wanted to know what the long-term effects of radiation was from the guys that are working in nuclear power plants. They said, let's figure out what the human biome's all about. What is the human biome? What makes us genomically and genetically human? And when they announced it, everybody was in shock. Oh my word, 98% of the genomics, the genetics, it's not inherited from your parents. It's the living bacteria in your gut and on your body that drive what you are. That's wonderful news, because that means you can take charge of this generation. It's not so much what you were given at birth, although that's very important from your parents, but you can genomically derive so much more just from your eating and what you have now in your gut biome. So powerful information just 15 years ago. The medical schools don't know what to do with it. They're trying to figure out, okay, how do antibiotics play with that? They don't play very well with that at all. So we're having to rethink medicine, and it's really wonderful to see the youngest pediatricians coming forward saying, I'm going to hold off on the antibiotic for your ear infection because we want to do probiotics first. Fantastic. Because when you need to use the antibiotics, they will work because you haven't abused them and create superbugs. Huge story here, but genomics, human genomics, the gut biome are driving the truth of medicine as it's always been. Hippocrates said, let food be your medicine and medicine be your food. He also said, all disease begins in the gut. He said, do no harm. 3 powerful things said 2,400 years ago. My God, have we not been listening to our ancient ancestral physicians? This is the truth of the ages, and it's coming forward now.
Who believes food can be your medicine? Yes. So I'm thinking of the person who is a little skeptical of some of the things you said and is like, I don't know, raw milk scares me. I've heard stories. I'm concerned. And then I've heard about your Raw Milk Institute. Speak to how that helps ensure that we're getting a safe, healthy product.
There are 16 dairies in North America that have taken the quantum leap to become listed by the Raw Milk Institute. And Sally Fallon, her little dairy she's been listed. She's been listed for a couple of years now. Every dairy that's gone to the Raw Milk Institute and filled out the application and gone through the process, which takes a couple of months, to actually do a lot of internal introspection of what risks they may have on their farm. When I say their farm, I'm not saying my farm, I'm saying their farm. One shoe does not fit all feet. If you're in Maine and you have 4 feet of snow on the ground and you got to put your cows inside in the wintertime, it's different than California with 365 days of sunshine. Or you get sunburned today. So everybody's got their own food safety plan. There's some things that overlap and other things that don't. So what we do is reach out and say, farmer, we can help you to help yourself become very safe. And it's remarkable what's happened with these 16 dairies. They report their bacteria counts every month. Because they're watching, what gets measured gets done. And it's amazing how safe. There's not been any incidents with the raw milk listed dairies in the last 7 years. Some of them are cow shares. Some of them are dairies that are selling into sprouts in Arizona. You know, Rick Anglin's doing a great job down there. There's dairies all across Canada. 5 dairies in Canada that have been doing it illegally. But we don't care about the legal side. We care about safety. Okay? They care about safety. And they're building a database of safety showing that raw milk intended for human consumption is so much different than raw milk intended for pasteurization. And we're building that database with 10,000 data points already showing that remarkably safe, differentiated product is clean, healthy, and safe. So Raw Milk Institute's a great organization to affiliate, to donate with, to do. And in fact, we're in negotiations right now with the United Kingdom to help them as well. Negotiations, I don't have a contract yet, but they're very interested because we're the only organization in the world, that actually has a food standard that can be applied on any size dairy to make a dramatic change in the food safety for the children.
Coming up, Mark talks about allergies, how pasteurized milk is the most allergenic food on the market today, and how clean raw milk can have a dramatic effect on reducing allergies in children, including asthma.
You're listening to the Wise Traditions Podcast, sponsored by the Weston A. Price Foundation. We pause now to recognize our sponsors.
Ancestral Supplements. They offer New Zealand-sourced bone marrow and nose-to-tail organ meats like liver, heart, kidney, pancreas, spleen, and more in simple, convenient gelatin capsules. Traditional peoples and early ancestral healers believed that eating the organs from a healthy animal would strengthen and support the health of the corresponding organ of the individual. In other words, a person with a weak heart was fed the heart of a healthy animal, and so on. I know I don't get enough organ meats in my diet personally, so I went ahead and got some supplements. So visit ancestralsupplements.com today to see what they can do for you. Ancestral Supplements, putting back in what the modern world has left out. And we want to connect with you face-to-face. You guys, this podcast is awesome. We feel connected with you, and virtual connections of all kinds on social media platforms are amazing. But there's nothing like seeing people in person. So join the Weston A. Price Foundation in Baltimore at the Wise Traditions Conference this November the 16th to the 19th. We'll all be there. Sally Fallon Morell, Chris Masterjohn, Dr. Tom Cowan, Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride, and so many other powerful, insightful, amazing speakers. I'll be there too, of course. So go to wisetraditions.org to sign up today. Early bird pricing is still in effect through September 20th, and you can get an additional $25 off at checkout by using the coupon code PODCAST. So come on out. We hope nothing holds you back, and we'll see you there.
So talk to us for a minute about people who are still afraid because they're lactose intolerant.
That sounds like a lot of fear here. Everybody's afraid. Let me tell you a quick story, and then I'll get into lactose intolerance. We have 22 farmers markets every week here in California. Some of them are here in LA. And, you know, it's interesting. You have the table, and we're standing there, and we're selling to people back and forth, having a dialogue. And you hear a Russian accent or a German accent or somebody from South America. Boy, they just want to get in the front of the line. Give me that milk like back home. I want my milk, raw milk. And you got this American mom coming up, all titty, I'm kind of scared, and it's like, that German mom said, get out of my way, I want my raw milk, right? The bottom line is it's a cultural issue we have with anything raw. We have been so much indoctrinated into no sushi, no raw milk, no anything that ultra pasteurized. That's a processor's engram put in our brain. We need to depart from that because those cultures around the world that eat the unprocessed foods are the healthiest. The Mediterranean diets, the Balkan diets. These are the diets that truly live 100 years and don't have disease. The Queen of England drinks raw milk. Oh, she did. She died now, but 102 degrees with a smile on her face and no disease in her body. The bottom line is these are ancient foods of the wisdom. When you put the cow in a grass pasture, you do a modicum of food safety, and you've got a remarkable food. So lactose intolerance. It's a very, very interesting question. We did a study with Dr. Chris Gardner at UCLA a few years ago, and they advertised for people that thought they were lactose intolerant. And they got 440 people to apply to the study at Stanford University. 440 people said, I have lactose intolerant. It gives me gas cramps, pains in my gut. I want to be part of the study. Guess how many people actually got into the study? Any guesses? All of them? Nope. Close. 16. Because the balance of them did not blow a hydrogen breath test and were clinically not lactose intolerant sufferers. So the bottom line is lactose intolerance is a very small subset of the problem that people have with digestion and allergenicity and compatibility with milk that's highly processed. So in raw form, virtually no one has a problem with digestion. It's food of the world. It's food for mankind. It's food for every race. If you're Maasai in Kenya, if you're Mongolia, they drink raw milk and they have no problem. They come to America and try to drink pasteurized and they have nothing but car wreck. So this is food for the world. And it's really unfortunate that the processors said, you have a personal problem if you have lactose intolerance because you're not white enough, or you're not this, or you're not that. There's political overtones to that in terms of some kind of racial deficiency you may have genetically, when in fact, it's the problem with the processing. And that's a powerful thing to say, but it's really true. Because everywhere you go in the world, people generally don't have any problem with raw. They have a problem with the highly processed.
Good point. He's passionate, just a little bit passionate, right? We need people like that.
Let me tell you why I'm passionate. Come here, Dylan. See this little superstar right here? Her name is Dylan. Come up here and stand up here real bright, okay?
Give her a hand.
Yeah. This is Dylan. What kind of milk do you drink, sweetie?
Raw milk.
See, she said raw milk. And she's as healthy as it gets. Mom and Dad can't be prouder of her. That's the way I'm passionate. That's why I'm passionate. I spent 17 years as a certified paramedic taking care of kids with asthma. Guess how many kids die every day from asthma? 10. 3,100 every year dying. Let me tell you, in the back of an ambulance trying to save a kid's life, you make me start to cry. We can now feed raw milk to kids, and guess what? Asthma goes away. Eczema goes away. Allergies go away. The European studies are very profound. Now, you can tell why I'm passionate.
So you mentioned the studies. Why aren't studies like that being conducted in the United States?
Great question, Hilda. Studies in the United States are generally funded by industry. Why would industry want to come out with good information about raw milk that bypasses industry? UC Davis, bless their hearts. They're fantastic researchers up there that do great work. They're tasked by industry through grants to go find out the good stuff in breast milk and raw milk, take it out, make it into a pill, and make money on it through a patent. You can't do that. Raw milk is a living food. Breast milk is a living food. So industry has a very frustrating time. These PhDs are extremely frustrated, very bright people that are saying, I can't do this. I can't take the sub part out and make it whole. It doesn't work. So Mother Nature had it right. And that's why we don't see studies in the United States. We see a lot of studies out of Europe because of socialized medicine and the fact they're trying to find a better way to prevent disease, prevent illness through immune system improvement. When you and I have to pay for each other in socialized medicine, you and I tend to treat each other a little different in terms, I want you to be healthy too because I don't want to pay for you. In the United States, it's like everybody's making money on illness. So why? So there's a real challenge in today's world in terms of changing that connection between doctors and farmers and food and people to prevent disease versus making money on illness. That's why we don't have any studies in the United States.
Well, speaking of studies, I've heard a lot of talk about A2 milk versus A1. Can you speak to that a little bit?
There's a minefield. I'm going to walk across it right now. Watch you very carefully. It's a very, very confusing thing. I think there may be some value in A2. But the problem is the science has been funded by the A2 Corporation. If you've been to the store and you've seen the A2 Corporation milk, the value is in the raw side, not in the ultra-high pasteurization side. A2 Corporation milk is UHT, ultra-high temperature processed. which means you lose all the immune factors. You lose all the lactobacillus bacteria, the enzymes, all the other things. And it's interesting because the behavior of the 67th allele, the proline that they're bragging about with the BCM7 free, is completely mediated by ultra-high temperature pasteurization. So I'm all about A2. Fantastic. We're about 90% A2 right now. We've been breeding for 3 or 4 years, well, almost 4 years at Organic Pastures for A2. But we believe it's more than A2, far more than A2. It's the processing of the milk conditioned with what you feed the cows and all the things. It's a holistic concept. Not one protein out of how many? 2,500. When you have 2,499 proteins to look at that are destroyed as well, I'm sorry, that's a very small part of a big picture. So I think, yeah, there may be some value in A2. I think the story is still yet to be told in terms of the jury being out. But look for A2 in raw form, not in highly processed, because you've lost all the value. So I think we got a snow job going on here big time in terms of how it's being presented to us. I think we need to look deeper for the truth.
And I want to get the big picture from you tonight as well. So I know you know what's happening in the dairy industry as a whole and maybe even internationally. Can you speak to that a little bit, Mark?
18 years ago when Sally and I and everybody was kind of starting this whole thing, I was considered a wacko on the fringe. The dairy industry would ignore me. The coffee shop, they'd talk bad about me. It was like, weirdo Mark, But now it's completely changed. And it's changed because I've shown up, I've stood up, and I've spoke up. And I've never, ever given up. And it's one of those things where we've had a mistake or a problem. We stood up and said, what can we learn from this, and how can we get better? And how can we learn? And that's why I've attended all the international milk genomics conferences the last 6 years around the world to learn from the PhDs about what breast milk is, how to test for milk, how to apply the best science, how to become the best you can be, how to make world-class raw milk. That's what we got right here, world-class raw milk. For example, everybody in the world's looking to try to follow in California. But that said, where we are today, I mean, how do we get there? It's literally driving step by step, day by day, getting better and better, taking all the technology we can to apply it. I forgot your question, so I want to answer it. What was it?
The big picture.
The big picture, okay. I just got back from the United Kingdom in Europe, and there's 178 dairies in England that actually sell milk legally to the public. They have actually vending machines there. And it's interesting to visit some of those dairies and see what their stories are. So we're starting to work with international relationships. Some of our PhDs that work on the Raw Milk Institute board actually have relationships with people in the EU and then the Netherlands because they live there. And so when we do our phone calls, we actually have to time it because we're 9 hours off. But nonetheless, we actually have a meeting every week, or every month, to talk about these international issues. The big picture is that 18 years ago, I was considered crazy on the fringe. But now I'm very honored to sit as a director of the California Dairy Campaign, which is a affiliation of hundreds of dairies, family dairies, conventional. I'm the only raw guy there, and a few organic people. And they've said, Mark, you go speak for us. You've been kind to us. You know that there's a big table and there's a place for everyone at the table. And we're all farmers feeding people, raw, organic, or conventional. And we need to be treated as such. It's a national value that we have that's being so poorly treated. Right now in America, we're losing 2 dairies a day. We went from 650,000 dairies in 1972 to 39,000 dairies today. Mostly because of pasteurization. I wrote an article, The 15 Things That Pasteurization Killed, a couple years ago. I don't know if you read it or not, but what it did was it took the value away from the farmer, and anything could get into the milk tank. You could take 50 dairies and put them all in the same milk tank, go down to the creamery and cook it, and it was all good. That meant it didn't matter where the milk came from. If one dairyman did really, really good, who cares? He's going to combine with the guys that weren't, and who cares? And right now in California, the milk price is about $13.75 per 100 pounds of milk. They need 18 to break even. It's hard to find a dairy that's not associated with 500 acres of almonds that subsidizes the dairy, because the dairies are going bankrupt left and right. In fact, there was a big conference call this morning from the California Dairy Campaign about these wonderful 4th and 5th generation families that are giving up dairying because they can't, economically, it makes no sense to do so. So there's a lot of dialogue right now about how to become a sustainable dairy system for America. The organic community is suffering too, having a hard time because the pasture rule is not being enforced, and as a result, there's an overproduction of organic. A lot of people that have been losing their backsides on conventional have gone to organic to make more money, and has completely swamped the market on organic pasteurized. On the raw side, it's sustaining pretty well because it's consumer connected, and we can set our own price. So the big picture is dairy's in trouble, and people are really looking to alternative products because of pasteurization. The most allergenic food in America, what is it? Pasteurized fluid milk. What's the fantastic thing that makes allergies go away? Raw milk. So we have people skipping the raw milk, going to almond milk. Almond milk is not complete. Neither is soy milk, hemp milk, or macadamia milk. All these other milks, they're not milks. In fact, the FDA said it so clearly. Beans don't lactate. Beans don't lactate. They make you do other things, but they don't make you lactate. So bottom line is, there's a problem with the fact that people affiliate in their minds all the downsides of pasteurized milk and are completely getting away from all dairy products because that's what doctors tell them to do. They're not saying go to a good source of raw milk to make your allergies go away and asthma get better. They're saying skip milk altogether because they don't know. Because remember, in medical schools, you don't talk about raw milk, even though the Mayo Clinic back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s was using raw milk as a cure. And the USDA back in the 20s and 30s and 40s was actually professing the value of raw milk cheeses. The studies are there. The university studies are fantastic in Europe talking about raw milk and raw cheeses. Fantastic about immune system building and all these things we talked about tonight. But the United States, it's kind of been sidelined. But I'm very honored to speak for all dairymen and all organic and conventional farmers and represent them in a positive light to try to get some equitable systems going forward. Just as a little quick thing here, I helped write a sustainable dairy plan for the United States. It's called SMIS, Sustainable Milk Inventory System. And it's much like Canada. And we're going to get called all kinds of names about it, but the bottom line is, regionally, there'll be dairy boards set up by raw, organic, and conventional dairymen sitting on the same board saying, this is the price we need. More for the conventional guys to process than the raw. But they'll also be saying, this is the maximum amount we're going to supply the marketplace, so we're going to coordinate supply and demand together. And there'll be some limitations on imports. Canada is one of the only places in the world right now where dairymen are thriving. They're thriving. They're retiring rich. The communities are thriving. They're doing well. The cows are being treated well. They have nice infrastructure. They pay their bills. In the United States, we've got one of the highest rates of suicides in the world, and bankruptcies are rampant. That is not the way you treat your farmer. We want to change that. So we're working on that really hard right now.
So let's have a cheer for raw milk. Yes. So all this talk about the wonderful properties of raw milk and raw dairy have got me hungry for this ice cream social we're about to do. So I'm going to just wrap it up with and it's with raw ice cream, which is going to be amazing, made by Karen Volkaning-Vahegan and many of our team members here, and we are celebrating the 100th meeting of the Pasadena chapter, so let's give it up. So it's been a wonderful occasion to get together. I want to wrap up with the final question that I always pose to my guests. If the listener could do one thing to improve their health, Mark, what would you recommend that they do?
A whole food diet. A whole food diet. That means less processed, farm-direct foods that don't have Roundup, GMOs, antibiotics, funky stuff you can't read or understand. You need to reconnect back to the soil and a farmer. That's what you need to do, and your diet should reflect that. If you can do that 95% of the time, you're going to have decrease in your risks like you can't believe. And these are the diets that Weston A. Price found that were prevalent around the world. They're not particularly one thing or another. They're the local diet, and they're the diets that are whole and unprocessed. And I beg you all, teach others about this. Teach others about this. We should be teaching. In fact, the last words of Weston Price were, you teach, you teach, you teach. We need to continue to do that because it's the only way we're going to shift the paradigm to become a sustainable society where we're not getting more and more sick. We're going to get more and more healthy. Thank you so much. I'm proud to be your farmer.
All right, well, thanks again to Joy, to the whole team here, the Pasadena chapter. You give us instructions next, and we're going to eat up. Thanks again, everybody.
My guest today was Mark McAfee. For more on Mark, go to his website, organicpastures.com. For today's show notes and resources we mentioned, including links to social media sites and so on, go to our website, westonaprice.org, go to the podcast page, and look for the show notes for episode 151. Oh, and on that same podcast page, you'll see our listener survey. Please take just a moment and fill it out for us. It won't take long, and it would mean so much. We're just trying to get to know you a little bit better so we can make sure our shows hit the mark. And thank you. Finally, when you get a chance, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. We are so close to 300 reviews. Please help us get there, and thank you in advance. Next week, everybody, we speak with Dr. Michael Ruscio about gut health. It's a topic we've discussed before, but I don't know, he just hit it from a super fresh angle. Maybe it's because he got sick in his 20s and he spent a lot of time and money treating symptoms until he finally hit on the root cause. It was a gut infection. His work today is to help all of us avoid the pain and suffering he went through. Learn more from our conversation next week. It's really good stuff. Finally, a quick thank you to our faithful team of podcast interns. Post-production assistants include Cassie Reef, Deirdre Beard, Diva Rizvi, Melanie Ahern, and Ari O'Hara. Cheryl Heftelin helps with social media. Mary Hine, Olga de Villiers, and Joy de los Santos boost sponsorship and help with special projects. Our listening team includes Heather Carpentier and Victor Coseto. Amy Matias helps with transcriptions. And the music today is a track from Michelle Bloom's CD called Big Backyard. The music itself is from a song called Sunny Side Up. Find out more about Michelle and her music at allthingsbloom.com. So that's it, everybody. Let's keep in touch. I'm on Instagram at holistic_Hilda. Follow me for health tips, podcast stuff, and behind the scenes on the show, and me. That's it, and see you soon.
Thanks for listening today. We have all kinds of resources to support you on your health journey. On the Weston A. Price Foundation website, you'll find podcasts, blogs, articles, and brochures related to just about any health topic you can imagine. You can also find a local chapter to help you discover sources of real, organic food in your area. And you can become a member to support the Foundation's mission of education, research, and activism. Visit westonaprice.org for all of this and more. And remember that the Wise Traditions podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, Overcast, TuneIn, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and more. Wise Traditions is a project of the Weston A. Price Foundation for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts.
Wake up, my little buttercup. Do you take your eggs scrambled or sunny side up? Tick-tock, it's time for bone broth with a side of bacon and coffee served with love. Wake up, my little buttercup. Do you take your eggs scrambled or sunny side up? Tick-tock, it's time for bone broth with a side of bacon and coffee served with love. Songwriting and sauerkraut, morning has broken, peace out. Please and thank you, what do you say? Stay together, friends, and have a wonderful day. Slow down, eye contact, shoes tied, hair comb, do you have your backpack? Keep calm and carry on. Don't forget your cod liver oil and your beeswax sunstick. Sun, 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 sun side up. Sun, 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 sunny side up. Sun, 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 sunny side up. Sun, 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 sunny side up. Songwriting and sauerkraut, morning has broken, peace out. Please and thank you, what do you say? Stay together, friends, and have a wonderful